She shook her head, showing that she didn't understand. I've been reading some more while you were unconscious, and I think I may have figured out what's going on here. Some of it, at least. He looked to Dave as if to ask permission to tell Annie his theory. Dave nodded, and he continued. This is going to sound really strange. She actually laughed. We're in a school that seems to be moving backwards in time, and I was just almost killed by Stretch Armstrong's crazy axe-murdering brother. I don't think anything you have to say is going to sound strange to me anymore. Okay, he said, thumbing through the book. It says here that Ei Sotak, the god that lives inside the pyramid thing that you found, he feeds on pain and insanity. Her eyes went wide in horror. Oh my god! I totally forgot! The claustrum, where is it? It's okay, Anton said, pointing to Dave, who held up the sheet-wrapped pyramid. We still have it. We found it when you passed out. Good, she said with a look of relief. I don't think we should let the vessel get his hands on that thing. I totally agree with you. I was going to get to that. Anton took a deep breath before speaking again. He obviously thought there was weight to what he was going to say next. The book says that in order for Ei Sotak to feed, he influences those around him, amplifying those things about themselves that they dwell on. Their obsessions. There are stories in the book about people who have gone completely insane because of their obsessions. One guy cut off his eyelids because he was so terrified of his own nightmares. He showed her the page of the book that he was currently open to. It showed a man, eyes wide and staring, with a maddening smile on his deeply lined face. My point is, Ei Sotak is some kind of spirit that feeds on our fear and pain, but it also feeds off of other spirits. If I'm right, it may be that what we're seeing happen here in the school is a byproduct of that. This place was a tomb for close to 50 men, women, children. We woke it up when we opened that door in the basement, but what if we woke them up too? What if Ei Sotak is causing their fear of this place to manifest physically, turning it back into the thing that they remember, the thing that killed them? She stared at him. I know, it sounds nuts, he shrugged. No, she shook her head. No, I think you might be right. When I'm near that claustrum thing, it makes me feel odd. Anxious, like I can't control my thoughts. Okay, let's assume you're right for the moment, she hypothesized. If we don't get out of here, the same thing will happen to us, right? We'll lose our minds too? Killed by our worst fears or something? I don't think it works that way, Anton said. It doesn't want us dead. It wants us afraid, or in pain. Its influence doesn't kill, it changes, molding first the mind and eventually the body. It takes the things about you that you can't face and tortures you with them. Then why is the vessel trying to kill us? She asked. That's the thing. Anton ran his fingers through his hair nervously. I don't think the vessel is an agent of Ei Sotak. I think it's a victim. What if it's the killer? The one who started the fire in the 60s, turned into some kind of mindless beast by Ei Sotak's influence. She nodded. It makes sense. If he was already a little unhinged, it wouldn't take much to push him completely over the edge. Something that feeds off of pain and insanity would love that. A depraved creature that is driven to kill recklessly and is touched by the guilt of every one of its victims? Yeah, Anton agreed. But there's more to it. The book also says that Ei Sotak desires to have a physical body, and only the vessel can give him that. A tortured spirit, forged by fire, that kills without remorse. The claustrum is a prison. The runes all over it were put there to seal Ei Sotak's power. If he's united with the vessel, he would be free, she asked, more powerful than he is now? Anton looked at her seriously. The last chapter of the book talks about the rise of Ei Sotak. It promises eternal life to those who follow Ei Sotak and give themselves to him willingly. It's a doomsday scenario. Like the end of the world? She asked him. Worse, he said. Hell on earth. If Ei Sotak gets a body, He will reshape the world to be his personal feeding ground. Tabby couldn't tell if it was the cocaine in her system or an adrenaline response to the constant fear she'd been dealing with, but she'd never been so horny in her life. Rob lay on his back, naked, holding onto her shoulders as she rode him like it was the last night on Earth. A foot away, their combined clothes sat in a messy pile, forgotten, and in the shadows of the doorway, leading into the room, the creature watched with its one good eye. Rob rolled Tabby onto her back and entered her with a long, deep thrust that forced a gentle moan from her lips. She locked her legs around his waist, and he leaned over her and began to fuck her harder. It was because of this position that Rob never saw the enormous shadow that rose up silently like a wraith behind him. Tabby saw it, however, and her face went from a look of ecstasy to one of horror. She tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Her muscles tensed reflexively. Rob could feel her body tense both inside and out, and in a second before the monster struck, he knew something was wrong, but he never had time to react. One great claw plunged like a piston into the exposed skin of Rob's lower back. It tore through skin, muscle, and sinew, pulverizing his spinal column and instantly paralyzing him from the waist down. He cried out in shock and pain, collapsing against Tabby as the muscles below his waist lost communication with his brain. Tabby found her voice, letting out a piercing scream that quickly deteriorated into a mad gabble as she tried to pull herself out from underneath Rob's weight. The creature grabbed the back of Rob's hair and pulled, craning his neck awkwardly, while putting its enormous knee against Rob's ass and adding its own substantial weight, pinning Rob both on top of and inside of Tabby. She clawed at the floor frantically, trying to pull herself away. Above her, Rob's eyes strained to look down at her. She could see the veins at the tops of their whites, as they opened as wide as they could, scanning with awkward movements to try to see her clearly. "Help me," he whined, and his eyes rolled horribly as the creature tore into his flesh anew with its free-clawed hand. She could feel his blood run down onto her, free from his veins and still warm with life. It pooled between her legs, made the floor slippery as she tried to free herself. The creature shifted its weight for another swipe, pulling back on Rob's head as it did, giving Tabby an instant to catch her breath and scuttle backward a couple of inches. She felt Rob's bloodless, flaccid penis slide out of her, and then the weight was back, pinning her and crushing her. The creature tore relentlessly at Rob, seemingly oblivious to the woman it pinned beneath him. Little by little, she worked herself free. Her mind was consumed now by panic, forced to decamp in a desperate need to protect her sanity, except for the primal, animalistic need to escape. With each frantic moment, she wormed herself a little further out from under the writhing bulk. Above her, Rob's mouth lolled open like an exhausted dog, leaking a blood-speckled trail of drool down her naked body. Then, suddenly and without warning, the creature reeled back, taking Rob unwillingly with it. Tabby sat bolt upright and pushed herself to her knees with her hands, almost slipping in the blood beneath her. Miraculously, she was free. Without a second glance at her would-be lover, or a thought to humility, she bolted like a steer, climbing to her feet and running naked out the open door and into the hall beyond. Rob, meanwhile, was sent sprawling onto his back. The cold concrete stung against his open and raw flesh. "What the fuck are you?" he screamed up at the creature bearing down on him. "Why are you doing this?" It came forward then. Rob tried to pull himself away from its advance with an awkward rowing motion, dragging his useless legs behind him. His hands slipped, slick with his own blood, and his head collided painfully with the concrete, causing him to black out for an instant. He was shocked back awake a second later as a new pain exploded from his hand and lanced up his arm. The creature had brought down one booted foot on his hand and was using it to fasten him to the floor, grinding his knuckles into splintered shards of bone. Rob watched as if in slow motion as the other foot came up. "No! No!" he protested. "Stop! What do you want?" He tried to pull away, but the immobilized, ruined hand secured him in place.